The Protestant Reformation is in many ways the most significant event in Western Christian history. It is a set of debates starting in what might seem an obscure monk giving some complaints, and by 50 years later you have what had been a united Western church divided still today. It led to some of the most vicious wars in European history in the 50, 60, 100 years after the Reformation, and it left a major mark on religion in the West. Some will say even the separation of church and state, the move toward a secular society in the West, had a lot to do with the breakdown of church unity that followed from the Reformation. So it was an event of really far-reaching impact for Western history. What was really difficult was that by a year and a half or 2 years, it got involved with politics. Within the Holy Roman Empire, that is most of Central Europe at the time, with princes taking sides. Remember, this is the period when nations are beginning to solidify and form. The question of who would control the church in an area, the princes or the bishops, was a major kind of question. So you start getting the breakdown of the unity of Europe affects then the breakdown of the unity of the church. So the two go together, each intensifying the other. The warfare really ends in the middle of the 17th century, in the big, say, 120 or 30 years. Of course, the division of the church, of course, is still going on. Once you break Humpty Dumpty apart, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again is not easy. The warfare part, by the middle of the 17th century, the wars of religion are broadly speaking over, although religious overtones of conflicts go on for some time. The changes really begin in the late 19th, early 20th century. I would personally see a lot of the changes in social change, social mobility, people moving around a lot more. Whereas in the past, you may live your life and hardly ever see a Catholic if you're in a Protestant area, a Protestant if you live in a Catholic area. Both World War I and II in Europe, the just overturning of social life means you get to know the other people and find out, they don't have horns. They're not so evil. That made a large difference. And at the same time, you had changes in scholarship of the Bible, scholarship of theology, bringing together Catholic and Protestant theologians, and discovering large degrees of common areas. I think the old structures of identity have mostly gone away, but there are still real differences. I don't see Protestant Catholic unity coming in the immediate future. There are real differences. So the question we face, for myself as a theologian, is how do we both affirm those commonalities while being honest about the continuing differences? For a Catholic, the church is important. We're a communal body, and the church has structures, has authority. The church is entrusted to guard revelation and interpret revelation. That gives a different kind of tone to Catholic life. A Catholic is committed to following church teaching in certain kinds of ways, which I think is rather different in the Protestant world. I don't want to isolate the Pope and the bishops. It's an attitude toward the way in which the church as a whole, the church as the entire tradition, is entrusted to hand on the faith faithfully. And there's a kind of trust that the church will get it right. The Reformation certainly forced the Catholic Church, I would say in some ways, to be more evangelical, to focus more on Christ. That was a good aspect. There are now ongoing impacts. I think there are things the Catholic Church should have done sooner, such as the liturgy and the vernacular, that weren't done because that's what Protestants do. So in some ways, the Reformation helped the Catholic Church see some things. In some ways, the Catholic Church overreacted and refused to do some good things because that's what Protestants do, like move toward the vernacular. So it's had, there have been good and bad kinds of ways in which the Reformation impacted Catholic life. The official goal of the Catholic-Lutheran dialogue is full communion. In some sense, finding ways of living out that unity, realizing that unity in a full way. Now, the question is, what does it mean to be one church? I think there would need to be some exploration, if we get to that point, some exploration of what kinds of diversity within real unity are possible. That's where I see the real hope of the Catholic-Orthodox relations, where you don't have as many doctrinal problems. But the deep problems is how do we live out the diversity of church cultures and administrative and authority structures. if we could get a breakthrough in Catholic Orthodox relations, that might open the way for models of how do we have unity that isn't simply everybody dissolving into one identically structured body.